Hello, this is Kevin Leahy from Dimension Data, and welcome everyone who's joined today. And I want to take the opportunity to also welcome my co-presenters today. And so we've got Jeff Wolcott from TBR, and he's the principal analyst in software and business intelligence at TBR. And then we've also got Anton Frenes, probably not a bad approximation of the name. But he's a director at EMC. He's a director at EMC focused on storage and storage management. And so for those of you who've joined today with the idea of staying relevant, as the invitation was, you missed the mark. Because relevance is not what your business is asking you to be. They're asking you to transform your business. They're asking you to become the enabler to how do they change their business. And more importantly, if you think about the underlying topic here is really going to be around storage because information is changing faster than anything else. And it's growing faster than anything else. So it's really about, I'm going to say, how do you, in the face of changing massive amounts of data, really take advantage of software, take advantage of the ability to program, and how do you use that to transform your business. And people don't usually think of the word elastic when they think of storage. They think of it as compute. I can turn compute off. I can program an API. I can turn stuff off. But data I keep everywhere. I keep it every day. I keep it forever. And the ideas of compliance and new HIPAA rules and things like that, it never goes away. So what does this notion of elastic mean in that environment? So first, I want to turn it over to our participant from TBR, Jeff, and really say, what do you see in the industry? What's this notion of elastic? And it really is probably more about movement of data than create it or destroy it. But really, what do you see in the environment, and how is that changing the role of IT for business and turning it to becoming the enabler? So, Jeff?
Yeah, thank you. The underlying shift really is in how it can be consumed, and that that is, as EMC talks about second platform to third platform, we just talk 2.0 to 3.0. So when I say 2.0, 3.0, I'm saying second platform, third, or from on-premise to cloud-based deployments. And what it's done is there used to be the competitive advantage for large enterprise. They had to buy the infrastructure. They had to have an IT data center, wire it up, get it set, and then look at what they could afford to do to inform or monitor, track the systems of record for their business. And today, you don't have to do that. There is a line of a couple of laptops, and Amazon allows you to start developing things such as Sugar CRM. That's how they get started. So that has radically transformed how IT is consumed, and it's taken the aura away a little bit to the IT center. So that idea of staying relevant means you have to be very responsible lines of business. So all the systems management, all the monitoring, all those things need to be automated and tracked, first for agility, to move it around, fail fast on development deals and those kinds of things, and then secondarily to also do the chargebacks. So there's the systems management for the old environment, the things that you used to do more manually that can now be automated, so it frees up the internal IT resources to move forward and be more of a BYO, CYO to the line of businesses. And that's coming down and really doing more advisory type of work and looking at ways to inform the business that were not necessarily things that the traditional IT centers were doing. So it's having these managed services to free up the admin tasks so you can be more actionable to the business in what they want. So that's where at TBR what we talk about a lot is there are three different kinds of buyers. The old traditional was own and control. Drop it on my dock, I'll wire it up, I'm going to write the code. Another one is build to results, buy the different pieces, stitch it together, maybe do some custom software development specific to a mission critical application within your business. And then the third one, which is really where the software as a service is going, is all they want is the outcome. We don't care what the underlying technology is. What we need to know is some sales metric at a certain time, regardless of how you got there. And that really puts pressure on IT to change how they respond internally. Some large IT shops I've met at analyst conferences from other vendors, there was a gentleman who had the title of sales rep within the IT department, because what his job was to do was to go out to the lines of business, find out what they needed, bring that back to IT, and then they would look between either what they had on their own or what they could then buy or subscribe to over the cloud to come and provide that result to the line of business. So IT is actually competing with the outside world, if you will, for the share of mind of the line of business. And backing that up is the types of things that we're talking about here in terms of storage management, systems management, being able to do the billing, the metering, the provisioning. There's another buzzword out in the industry. Do you move the app to the data? Do you move the data to the app? That's that movement. That would, I think, reference the elasticity you were talking about earlier. So if everything you knew is conventional wisdom up until about 5 years ago seems to be turned on its head, is the way I look at it. But with that, I'll turn it back unless you have other questions.
Oh, there's a billion questions in so little time, and I think that's why people join these Hangouts to get them answered. But I want to ask a drill-in question on just a couple of things. You talked about a lot of things.
Right.
And most of us can only do one or two things at a time, some even less than one. But let's pick just one or two things. If I think about information as opposed to storage, information is pretty important, but many clients don't even yet have a good policy. So before I can automate, don't I have to have a policy about information? And when I do that, how do I prioritize within that, where I focus from a policy perspective? Because it all starts with knowing what information and putting some contextual policy around what do I do with that information.
You're absolutely right. It's a prediction we have at TBR for a rise of the strategy consulting firms. And what that really gets down to now is, in the old days, what you could afford for hardware constrained what you were able to do to inform the line of business. Today, with the cloud, it's sort of unleashed. So what you have to do is go back and truly reevaluate the business processes and practices that you have, and then from there you can determine the structure you need for your IT infrastructure in terms of the calls and everything else you may want to put it. What type of storage you want it on? Do you want it, flash storage is a classic example of that in the tiering, the hierarchical structure that you have underneath all that. And given the lower price points for just the bare metal, whatever that may be, you're not constrained by, oh, we can't afford to store it. It's more, where are we going to have it? How quickly do we need to access it? Where can we put it? And now overlay on top of that the regulations and compliance. So for healthcare and financial services, obviously they're the two sort of most heavily regulated components that we have. They have a huge set of business environment challenges that they have to monitor before they can determine what they're going to do with IT. There's almost two axes here. What is the complexity of the business in which you operate? And then what's the underlying infrastructure you have that you either need to bring with you that's legacy, or just the scope and size of what you have. We did a end customer interview for it was a box retailer of sorts. They merged. They had a very progressive IT infrastructure. The acquiring company still had had their core data on AS400s, and they went with the AS400 one because they were to the victor goes the spoils. That IT won. And as we were arguing, they could probably pick them up in landfills if they need to get some extra ones, because those have been around for a while. But that is the kind of rationalization that the business has to do, informed by IT, with IT also showing them what else they can do. And that really is also coming around to the emerging topics around systems of engagement. Because systems of record are the transactional things, ERP, inventory, all the accounting methodologies and metrics. Systems of engagement are more customer facing. those are the ones that could have, to use the term you were using earlier, sort of elastic bursts. You're going to do a major marketing initiative. You're going to get a lot of transactional volume data. You're going to want to store that. You're then going to want to rationalize it, ingest it, extract what you need, and then get rid of the remainder. That kind of goes to the Paul Maritz statement of analyze, store everything, analyze anything, right? Just capture it, and then figure out what you're going to do with it to extract business value.
So there's a lot of imagery that came to mind. We started with stay relevant, and then we went quickly to it's really about become critical to the business, and then we brought them to the landfill, scavenging around for old disk, and I think we've gone from every extreme possible. But one image is Anton, this is really all your fault. You guys at EMC keep introducing tremendous technology at such a rate and pace that IT can't keep up. So I'll give you a chance here to say, with this advent of technology that's coming at rate and pace, and the change of all this, what the business expecting so much out of that information, how is EMC helping us solve the problem? And really, what are not the products, but what are the approaches to architecting a data center and storage infrastructure of the future that's going to help us, get this under control?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to say it's EMC's fault. I would say that EMC is riding the wave of innovation that's really happening across the industry, and it's affecting customers and clients across all different industry verticals and domains, and so what the way we are adapting is we realize that it's a journey, and EMC likes to use this terminology a lot. You're not going to go from today's world or yesterday's world to the future in a step function, right? You have a lot of legacy IT, you have a lot of legacy processes. You're going to have to be able to evolve from the data center centric, the storage system centric version of the world into the more consumerized IT version of the world. So back to what you said, Kevin, it's really not about relevance for IT. It's about agility, and it is about becoming more strategic to the business. So I would say that EMC is approaching this in a number of different ways. First is recognizing the need for heterogeneity and openness. So from our management and orchestration layer on down to our storage products, we're working to ensure that RESTful APIs are available so that data and information can be accessed using all different protocols via open standards. We're also there's a very strong emphasis on heterogeneity. Understanding that our customers have an existing investment in a lot of gear, and that gear is not going away tomorrow. So we need to be able to manage our data across all of the different systems that are out there. Back to the Paul Maritz reference, right? If we can succeed in viewing data more as a data lake, as opposed to silos of data on different systems, then we'll be able to do a lot more things a lot more quickly than we have in the past. Reasoning across different data sets, rationalizing different data sets. So EMC's approach at the highest level is a federated approach. When we say EMC, we're really talking about a federation of companies and business units. So there's EMC information infrastructure, and EMC information infrastructure is really focused on storage systems, on the management and orchestration layer, on converged infrastructure, pretty much the piece parts and the intelligence that you would use to manage those piece parts. In addition, we have VMware, which is squarely focused on the software-defined data center, software-defined networking, and Pivotal, which is our analytics and real-time intelligence and platform as a service business unit, and then RSA, of course, which is focused on security. All of those things come together because when we're talking about IT being strategic, being agile, use whatever term you want. It's really about IT providing the public cloud experience to the business user, and that's great. The public cloud experience. I hope you can still hear me. I just got a little okay. The public cloud experience is about being able to quickly access the services that you want, being able to ensure SLAs and pay for what you use. But there are aspects that are important, that are unique to enterprises that EMC is able to address. Security being one, enterprise-grade reliability, and so on and so forth. So I don't know if.
Well, I guess I want to come into one particular element. So one of the challenges, as I work with clients regularly, is really I've got all this technology, and so you mentioned heterogeneity. We've also mentioned the value of information. But you get down underneath it, we want to get pragmatic and help people get from step 1 to step 2. So there is a need to sort of abstract out in the information world, just like we did in the server world, get down to the point of I can make this simpler to manage. And if I can make it simpler to manage, then I can exploit APIs to start to make some decisions and drive consistent execution. And then if I can do that, then I can get value out of the information. So what's the approach here? Do I standardize on a single technology of storage? That seems like an ever-ending change that I can never do because it just changes too fast. Or do I abstract it? And if I abstract it, what value does that abstraction give me in terms of simplifying my life?
Okay, no, that's a good question, and they're really so to answer your question about standardization, of course not, right? If you have a complex data center or set of data centers, you have a variety of storage gear. The approach that EMC takes, and a good example is our Viper product, is to separate the what we call the control plane from the data plane. And what that means in practical terms is you've made an investment in storage from EMC, probably from some of EMC's competing vendors like IBM, NetApp, and Huon, and so forth. You want to be able to protect that investment. There's a lot of intelligence, a lot of automation built into those systems that you bought. You don't want to so separating the data plane from the control plane is first and foremost about enabling those systems to do what they do best, whether it's automated tiering, snaps, clones, all replication, all the things that storage systems do. But then looking at the control plane, you want to be able to manage that all from a single pane of glass. You want to be able to view your entire infrastructure and manage your entire infrastructure as a single entity, and you want to be able to then, as you said, abstract that heterogeneous storage into pools, into abstract pools. So that's really the approach that EMC's taking from a management and orchestration level.
All right, that's cool. So what I understand then is, from Jeff, we have a market trend. We have this pervasive thing. We have this desire for automation, and the need to respond to the business in light of, ever-growing data and business challenges, and more importantly, disruptive changes. And in spite of the onslaught of technology that Anton's refusing to take responsibility for, but rather giving us an opportunity to say, we'll get this under control because we can abstract it. And we can create this ability to take all those things you've invested in over the years, and I can get it under control because I can create this abstraction layer that provides an API and an opportunity to automate and control it, which leads us perfectly to the question we just got in the comments I was going to make. So online we had a question came in and says, how do you see the organization and structure of IT changing to respond to this new environment, and will IT move to an outsourced model? And that was actually going to lead to sort of the conversation I was going to introduce, which is really how do you respond to all of that? So technology is there, the need is there, but what do you do? And I think what we're seeing at Dimension Data is clients really saying, I've got this technology, but I really need to start to look at my business processes and my organization structure to say, what am I going to do with this? And so what we're seeing as clients, it really starts with one of two things, and it's not just outsource. I would say outsource is one of the consumption models I can use, but what they absolutely are coming back and saying is, I need to think about where am I going to spend my time, and most importantly, how am I going to optimize my processes and my organization to take advantage of all of this? And where do I want to focus? Do I want to focus on the value of technology, or do I want to focus on the value of the information? And if I want to focus on the value of the information, then maybe I want to say, I can define that information structure. I can define how important information is, where it will be, and if I can do that, and if I have the abstraction that Anton talked about, then perhaps what I really do is I set policies. And then I turn to a way to automate those policies and have that drive the change within that business. And that change is both where is the information going to be located, as well as who's going to pay for it and for how long is it going to stay there, and what are the charging mechanisms for that. And that mechanism needs to track to the value of the information over time. The information is new, it may be very, very high value, and I may need it very quickly. But if that information's aged, the trending information is very, very high value, but it's not each individual element that value at that point. It's the overall trends, and it's what is directionally, what does that tell me, and how does that allow me to do analytics over time. So what we see happening is one of two things. People are starting to say, I need both my data, and I need it right there, and it's my business critical, my differentiating information, and that I'm going to keep. It's going to sit on my premise, and it's very, very business critical to me, and it's the jewels of the company. But then there's other information I'm getting from machines and devices and mobile users that has a different role in my structure. It informs me, but it's not business critical to me. And I may use object store in a cloud remote, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to gather it, I'm going to filter it, and I'm going to import a certain amount of that into my environment, and I'm going to retain it. Or if I do it conversely, if I'm a stock exchange, and we've seen this in some of the major stock exchanges, the transactional data I keep all within the stock exchange. 7 days later, it's history. It's all happened. And universities and traders and other things will analyze that data for trending information and just start to think about what do I do for the future. But that's all public information now. There's no differentiating value. And I might move that to a public cloud. Much cheaper, and it's available to anyone. Now, of course, in doing that, I had to privatize that information. I had to take out, individuals' names and account numbers and things like that. But there's a massive trend going on. And so you start to think about the relationship for that, and who is going to invest in understanding the process around my value of my information versus the process to manage that data. And so more and more people are saying, I want to set my policies for my information, but you go ahead and you invest in the automation. Invest in my ability to move that data between those locations, and give me the ability to focus on the value of the information and talking to my business people and how will that information transform my business. And now I've moved from relevance to actually transformation and changing how business deals with this over time. And so I think that's what we're seeing is the continual question of how much do I do, and where do I invest, and how much does someone else do? And that someone else might be a Dimension Data, it might be a public cloud provider, but it very much is about information policy. So I don't see new questions coming in right now, but perhaps if people have some, you can put that into the event chat window, or you can put at Twitter on hashtag DD Hangouts. But in the meantime, I'm going to come back to Jeff, and I'm going to ask, if you see clients in this realm, how many do you think are ready for the policy of information? Do you think most are ready? Do you think most are looking for help there, or do you think it's just a matter of they've got the information, they just haven't codified it, if you will?
It's a great question, because I sense a disconnect, I guess is the way to put that, is because we're talking about the rise of analytics, right? And that the line I use is that computers are now smarter than we are. We've really gotten to HAL in 2001: A Space Odyssey. Machine-generated learning, and what you can do to automate services and predictive maintenance and all these different ways. In call centers, you can automate the voice, for lack of a better word, by having the computer spit questions and get better action to the end customer that's being interacted with the human being. But the analytics and the queries and the what-if analysis is all being done much, much faster. And on the other end, if you just ask a general survey to end users and you say, are you prepared for analytics? People look at analytics across a broad continuum, because one can argue business has been doing analytics since Mitch Kapor developed Lotus 1-2-3. And what we've found with the very large enterprises, the real strategic thinkers here, is in a recent round of interviews I just completed, when I would hit them or probe them on analytics and who were they going to use and how were they going to deploy it, what they were saying is they were getting their internal practices, policies, and procedures in place, and the governance, to get ready so that the data was set to now go evaluate what they were going to do for really sort of leading edge emerging analytics capabilities. So analytics, big data analytics is one of the shiny buzzwords in the industry, like the Internet of Things, and a couple other software defined is another one. I mean, it's coming. There's still things that need to happen. It's a good overall architecture, but there still is a lot of custom development work that needs to be done, depending on what environments you have to stitch together for these end customers. So it's not just sort of a quick push of the button yet. It will become industrialized as more and more custom engagements are done around the different infrastructures that are out there. But they're not, it's not as simple as some would lead you to believe just yet. So that role of IT is really working with the strategic planners. One of the things that we see, or we think could very well happen, is IT almost splitting into two different operations or organizations within the business. One would be that traditional kind of management as we've historically understood it, that services management through analytics and a few other sophisticated software capabilities can do for IT and reduce the number of bodies you need to perform that function. But that's sort of the CapEx control. What is our infrastructure going to be? Where is it going to be? How much are we going to spend on it? Are we going to buy it? Are we going to subscribe for it? That's kind of the old version of IT. The new version of IT is working more and more with the strategic planning function. What does the business need, or what can IT provide to the business that they can act upon for competitive advantage? And that's where it's, somebody at a briefing for the strategy-led side of one of the larger firms out there talked about historically the way it worked is a management consulting firm came in, took a ton of money, left a 5-pound PowerPoint deck that told them what to do. They then had 3 to 6 months of doing RFPs, getting the iron. Then they wrote to the specs that the management consultants had written, and then after about 9 to 12 months, they finally had a live install. Today, the strategy consultants will come in, they'll say, we have this utility, this tool, if you give us your data, we'll show you the results. So that the time to, the proof of concept has to be almost immediate, the time to value has to be almost immediate, and conversely now, the competitive advantage you gain from having done that is narrower and narrower, because the barrier to entry for that competitive advantage, i.e. can I buy the infrastructure, isn't there anymore, because a lot of folks can, what an early adopter can get, a laggard can now get on the cloud if you're using the same version. So it's just radically accelerated what I call the velocity of commerce, and therefore those points where you gain competitive advantage from what you're doing are shorter and shorter. You're just always going to be in an innovative cycle. And
So I agree with that completely. It's the speed and pace, right?
yes.
And well, you mentioned the computer being smarter than you. My phone is way smarter than me, so it's the pace. The pace keeps moving, right? And so it's the pace of information. It's the pace of technology. But Anton, you sort of described how EMC's changed and expanded the federation, and there's so much more capability there. But what do you see as the issue? So the technology's there, the pace and need, and the business drivers are there, but it's hard to keep up. What do you see from clients adopting your technology as the critical step? Is it just buying more technology, or what prevents them from keeping the pace that Jeff just described?
Well, it goes back to what you said earlier, which really drawing the distinction between what information you're keeping on the private cloud, what information you're keeping on the public cloud. EMC refers to this as the enterprise hybrid cloud, and we're not the only ones. However, the trick, I think, the hard part is to be able to move data, to be able to manage data across these private and public cloud domains. In the public cloud realm, you have a number of different providers, and with those different providers, you have different data access, different data formats, and different rules. And then in the private cloud realm, there's a lot of custom coding, a lot of customization. So who's going to spend the time to bridge the gap? I mean, you can think of this almost as the new tiering. Right? How do you tier between the private and public cloud? If IT is going to be expected to make that happen, to connect those dots, then IT is going to get buried in the weeds. It's just going to take forever. So I think EMC recognizes that what our customers need is that ability to bridge the gap between private and public. So we've made investments both on the EMC information infrastructure side as well as on the VMware side to provide that seamless interoperability between private and public clouds. And interoperability might not even be the right word, but the ability to again abstract those domains into a single data domain, essentially. And that is going to be a key differentiator for IT departments and for service providers that want to provide enterprise level enterprise hybrid cloud functionality, because the reasons, and you alluded to this earlier, Kevin, that a company would want to keep some data private, range from regulatory to just the importance of data, the criticality of it, and you can't just you can't go about this in a haphazard manner. But from a technology standpoint, I think the real important thing for EMC to focus on delivering to the marketplace is that ability to really abstract your private and public cloud infrastructure, and to give customers the flexibility to span those domains, if that makes sense.
So it makes perfect sense. So we've got the sort of bifurcation of the business and the objectives. We've got the need to sort of bring that hybrid environment. You call it EMC hybrid cloud, others call it hybrid IT, we call it the next generation data center, but it's all about bringing the cloud, the data center, and the network to connect the pieces together. But it really ends up being about policy. It's about information and what matters to the business, and how do I make it accessible to the business when it needs it, as fast as it needs it, and pay for it in when you need it, but as opposed to pay for, just in case you need it. And that's really about bringing the pieces together. So it's a combination of the fungible capacity with the capacity you own based on the value of that information. And I guess if I were to advise people, first is understand the architecture of your data center, understand the pieces that come together and where the information is going to belong. And if you don't have a policy for that information, you need one. And you need to then ensure that the data that goes to the cloud versus that goes on your premise is the data you want there, and you have a way to automate and govern that, and that you make the process investments to do that, and you focus your business on the value of the information, and look to others, whether it's the technology or the managed providers, to help assist you with doing the plumbing and automating those policies. Automate what's important to you versus just automating for automating's sake. And so I think understanding the value, where it's connected, and what are the critical elements for your business is important, because keeping pace for all of it is tough to do when you're actually just really looking to be a bank or a retailer or insurer or whatever business you're in. And so understanding that where you draw the line, what you do, and what the technology does and what your other providers do is critical to that overall architecture. So we are just about out of time, but I do have one last question which came in. A major challenge is moving data, which cannot be trivialized. I agree that older data can be migrated off to a low-cost offsite storage, but how do you get it there securely and quickly? And I'm going to take that because as a service provider side, I think that's an important element. So I think there's two things. It's how do you get it there, and when do you get it there? And so this is again about policy. So what many people do is they look at the data transfer, and it's important to think about when do you transfer it, and then when do you sort of transfer what's changed versus what's new. So in many cases, when you think about things like simple things like backup and DR, of course backup, if you dedupe and you only change, send the changes, you're not really sending that much data. You look at when do you transfer things when the network's not busy. How do I use accelerators across those networks? So for one particular client on our cloud, we transfer 20 terabytes of new data every 2 hours. We do it to 5 regions of the world. But that's planned. We take advantage of network accelerators and things like that to do it. But things like backups and snapshots, you're really transferring small amounts of data because very little has changed in those snapshot windows. And so that really lessens the amount of data to be transferred. But as Jess also mentioned, you also look at what do I do to the data where it's created, and how much of that data do I send back. And so it's not about transferring all the data, it's transferring what of that data you need. So it's a combination of really looking at the data you need and where is it located and what percentage or what of it do you need to store, and then how do I take advantage of the network to move it, and when do I move it so I'm not really contending with transactional traffic versus backup traffic and things like that. So it's all of those things. There are best practices that people like EMC, ourselves, etc., can share with you, but it's understanding those patterns, which is really the art to sort of an optimal storage architecture. So with that, I don't see any more questions. I do want to thank Anton and Jeff for participating, and I will thank those who took the opportunity to join for sharing in this discussion. Thanks all, and hope to see you again on another Hangout.
All right.